Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Loving the Game. And tonight I've got a very interesting guest with me, someone that's come through the ranks in all facets of the word, a sportsman in his own right, loves surfing, loves swimming, loves everything that you can possibly think of. And most of all, he's a very, very passionate photographer. And not just any kind of photographer, which we'll find out as the evening goes along. But let me not waste any more time and let me introduce you all to Thys Lombard. Thys, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Jack. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, no, it's a privilege, man. We've been chatting so much that I almost feel like I've known you for years, and I've been following your series on YouTube, where you've been covering your career and the whole everything surrounding your photography and what you've been doing and how it all started, and I think tonight we're just gonna try and capture all of that in the next hour or so. With some other extra, stuff that I think you can share with us that you've shared with me over, the last few weeks that we've spoken. But to start things off, who is Thys Lombard, and where do you come from?
That's a interesting question, Jackie. I was born in Strand, Somerset West. Grew up in Strand. That's actually where I also fell in love with rugby because my dad had a few friends who were very good rugby players. In fact, the one became the rugby player of the century of South Africa. But I was a very small kid, always joined my dad when he went to rugby. And so I watched Somerset, those days Somerset Strand, but now Oldenburg Rugby. So that's basically where it all started. Also fell in love with the ocean, went body surfing a lot with my dad. At a later stage started surfing, but then we moved to Windhoek in, I think, 1976. So I've just given away my age. I'm not a youngster, as the beard will show as well.
Yeah,
We lived in Windhoek for 4 years. I started swimming while I was there, and it actually had a massive impact on my life because when we returned back to Strand, I would have gone to Hoërskoolstrand, but they didn't have swimming. And then the only schools I could go to were either the schools in Cape Town, the Wynberg, Sachs, Ronnebosch. They all had very good swimming coaches. And then two schools in Paul, Paul Boys and Paul Gym. And
yeah,
so my dad chose Paul Gym, and I'm very happy because I had an awesome high school years. And if you're in Paul Gym and you don't like rugby after that, then there's something wrong with you. So that's basically. And then after that, Stellenbosch University in the 80s, where a lot of Springboks, they all still played club rugby. So, the Fafat Nutzes, Gert Small, Karel
yeah,
Duplessis, Michael, they were all
yes,
playing for Marties. That's, you cannot not fall in love with rugby if you see these
yeah.
guys. So I spent maybe too long time at Stellenbosch, but spent an extra year. But I found an awesome wife in my first year, which just enhanced the love for rugby because her dad was a Springbok rugby captain in the 60s.
Oh
So
wow.
I had no choice. Rugby was in front of me all my life, and I'm so grateful for that. So yeah,
Gee,
basically that's yeah.
that is really, really cool. You were clearly dipped in rugby from the word go, if that is a term. You've touched on quite a few things that I actually wanted to ask you, but I think, we can dig a bit deeper
Yeah.
into that. Like you mentioned, where you fell in love with rugby was, through your father, who
Yeah.
had some amazing friends. You said rugby player of the century, Frick de Pre, you're obviously talking about.
Yes.
Um, I remember watching one of your videos that you've been making, and where you actually had pictures of you in this huge Springbok jumper, these massive pants. I don't know how you kept them on, and those massive boots, those old ones. Those I
Yeah.
don't even know how guys played in those shoes back in the day. But there were some other names on the photographs. That was those brides or whatever you guys would kayers that you guys were having. Just tell us some of the names that you grew up. Literally, you grew up in front of these people.
Um. So the rugby jersey, that the picture that you referred to was actually Tiny Nodia. Tiny Nodia was probably the first Springbok I ever saw in my life, in real life. I was about 5 years old, and we used to go to. I called him Tiny. We used to go to his house just about every weekend. to have a braai, and obviously Frick de Pre and him, they were good mates. I think they played a few test matches together as a lock. And yeah, we dig into Tiny's old rugby jerseys, and they were all black jerseys, Springbok jerseys, junior Springbok jerseys. The picture that was taken, I think I was 5 years old, and I'm wearing the number 5 Springbok 1965 jumper, the year that I was born in. And my sister's wearing a junior Springbok, a blue jersey in that picture. And I'm wearing Tiny's boots and his shorts. That's why they were slightly too big for me. And yeah, my dad he was always in awe when he spoke about Frick and Tiny. And in later life, when I started going out with Lismary, who's now my wife, her dad, when I mentioned that, Lismary's dad was a Springbok rugby player, my dad said, who's her father? And I said, IB Malan. I mean, I could see that.
Wow.
Springbok rugby meant so much to my dad. He was also quite a competent rugby player, a hell of a lot better than I ever was in my life playing rugby. But I just knew that rugby in South Africa meant a lot. So I had no choice but to just love the game. And I still love the game, still passionate about it.
How did you end up in Tiny Nodia's clothing, of all things? I mean, you don't hear of people going to braais of friends and ending up in the clothes of the friends.
Yeah.
That is hilarious. Never mind a Springbok kit, of all things.
He had like a laundry bin full of old rugby jerseys, training jerseys.
Oh wow, serious?
And we would every weekend just go there, put on some of the jerseys, and then play on the grass in these rugby jerseys. And then when Tiny gave me that jersey, I've still got it. He gave me a pair of Springbok socks and the jersey, and I wear that jersey every time the Springboks play a big match. So I've worn it at every World Cup final, and I think it's a lucky charm. When I put it on, the Springboks do really well. So
yes, that is amazing.
I mean, he gave it to me. It is just, luckily my dad kept it till I was about 20, 21, 22, because he said, you're too young to comprehend what this means. And
Yeah.
I remember showing that jumper to my father-in-law. It must have been in 2004, 2005. And when I lifted up the jumper and I showed him the badge, he immediately said 1965. And I said, Dad, how do you know that? He says, the stitching on the back and the Springbok badge. They knew exactly every year what the Springbok badge looked like. And to me, that also said, these guys were so passionate about not that I'm saying the current brand of Springbok are not. I mean, they all are. But just he immediately said, that's a 1965 jersey. We wore it on the tour to New Zealand and Australia. So
yes,
very special, very special.
Yeah, because I mean, back in the day, the badge changed quite often.
Yeah.
It doesn't change that much nowadays.
Yeah.
And hopefully it won't change too much either. But yeah, it's interesting, and that's actually quite an interesting topic to know that. I mean, the guys were that into it, that they actually knew exactly from which era or what year that was and everything like that. Growing up as a little boy, who were some of the players that you admired? The guys that were basically your childhood heroes.
I think my first really vivid memory of Springbok rugby was actually not such a good one. It was the 1974 British and Irish Lions who toured to South Africa. It was an incredible team. I mean, I could name quite a lot of the British and Irish Lions players, the legends, Phil Bennett, Gareth Edwards, and these guys. So, but I think they won just about every match and drew the last test match. So it was not a good one for the Springboks. But Jan Boland, I think, made his debut. I think Hannes Maree was the Springbok captain in that series. Morne du Plessis. I mean, these guys played. So if I had to say the first playing Springbok that I really got to know the name and admired was probably Morne du Plessis, and then obviously Jan Boland, Hempies de Toey, Rob Lowe. These guys, they in the later years, even being a staunch Western Province supporter, you couldn't help but admire Naas Botha as well. And got to meet Naas later. I mean, my father-in-law was the manager of the Springbok teams that he played in. So, I mean, I just, Springboks to me were demigods. You couldn't even speak to these guys. They were on a next level. It's a bit different today. I know a lot of the Springbok players today through my photography. And but every time I walk away, from a rugby match when I've mixed with these guys, I'm just in awe at they take hard knocks. You have to be pretty tough to be a Springbok. I mean,
Yeah.
A couple of my matric mates became Springboks and played in the winning '95 World Cup as well. I mean, Bali and Kobus Wiese, they in my eyes still legend. I mean, if you don the green and gold, you're in a different class.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, see, I mean, I mean, we've just a bit off the topic. I mean, you actually found him just before we went on air, and Marius Kuman, who was a very close friend of mine in primary school, and then when we went to high school, I went to Pietermaritzburg, and he went down to Paul, and obviously became a Springbok Seven. In my eyes, Springbok Seven's legend, and I mean the work that he's doing now, even still, it just builds on that whole thing. Every that just shows you how passionate he is about the game and about sevens. And I know how hard he tried to get into the 15s game as well. I mean, and it's nice to know someone like that. You really feel proud because you can say, that was my friend at some stage in my life.
Yeah.
So I kind of understand what you're getting at, and I mean, it's just, I think your stories are far better than mine. I mean, geez, you literally grew up with the most famous of famous Springboks that we've had. You mentioned your father-in-law, IB Malan, and I mean that you obviously, well, I mean, your father-in-law, you married his daughter, and then you touched briefly on it when that you said your dad asked, who's the father of this lady, and I mean, what was his reaction when you told him?
Um, Obviously, just listening to the stories that my own dad told me about IB Malan, he was a legend, back in the '60s. Played 18 test matches over 8-year career, and in those days they played 3 or 4 test matches per year. So,
Yeah.
and just to give you a bit of background, he told me often that he weighed 83 kilograms when he played hooker for the Springboks. So that says that he must have had to make up for the loss in weight. He must have made it up in attitude. I mean, he had quite an attitude on and off the pitch, trying to ask his daughter's hand with someone with an attitude like that, especially if you're a surfer, not really a rugby player. But I just picked up from my own dad speaking about these guys, and when I said IB Malan, he said, "Sheesh, do you know who IB Malan is?" And, no, well, it's Lismary's dad. He said, "Well, he's one of. I mean, that was in 1981 when I met her." He said he's one of the greatest Springboks of all time, and my dad and AB knew each other before then, but they became good friends. And I mean, that there was always a lot of respect for the fact that my father-in-law played for the Springboks.
How did you convince AB that that he must give his daughter, a hand to you? Did you have to throw in a few tiny nodeers and frick the prayers and stuff in there?
I tried my best, but it took me 8 years. I went out for 8 years before I popped the question. So maybe there's a hidden secret or hidden message in that it took me 8 years to marry her. But no, we became incredibly close, and I farmed for him for 7-8 years. Actually, virtually lived in his house for 7-8 years. I mean, spent a lot of highs and lows together. I can honestly say that I loved the man for who he was, and if there was ever someone who was passionate about the Bok jersey, I mean, in the end, if you look at the way that he passed away, they actually operated on a knee that he hurt on a tour to England, and he strapped it up and played with it. And I said, "Why did you do that?" He said, "Because if you give a reserve hooker a chance to play, he might just stay in the team." So I just decided not to. And at the age of 78, he had to have a knee replacement. And in the end, with complications, he passed away. And I'm sure, having known him very well, if I asked him today and said, "Dad, you're going to hurt your knee, but at the age of 79, that's going to cost you your life," he would take the Springbok test matches immediately. It wouldn't even be, he wouldn't even doubt it for a second. He was just passionate and quite a straight shooter. I mean, a lot of guys, didn't like it that he was a hooker. He came from the front. He approached you from the front. He said what he wanted to say. But just going back to one of my childhood heroes, when my father-in-law passed away, the first SMS that I got was from Morne du Plessis.
Wow.
And he called me Mr. Lombard. I just heard of the sad passing of one of the Springbok greats of all time. I mean, I get teary-eyed when I think of the message. Kobus contacted me. The respect the guys had for him was immense. And that, I mean, Avril Malan was already quite old. He traveled from Joburg to Uppington for the funeral.
Yes.
I mean, I read on Facebook the other day, someone asked a question and said there was bad blood between AB and Avril because in the 63 test series, the AB was captain and then got dropped after the second test, and Avril was made captain and then got dropped after the third test, and AB was made captain again in the fourth test. Very interesting series.
Yeah.
They were friends till the day he died. And so I just thought, you know, maybe I should just go and clear. And I said to him, well, if there was ever bad blood between them, they left it on the rugby field. I'm sure they were competitive. I mean,
yeah.
You know, these guys are competitive to the end, but off the
They
field,
are. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, when they're playing, you know, for their provinces and stuff, you know, it's a different game. But then,
they
you
want
know,
to kill you.
when they all become Springboks, you know, you never think it's like, even in today's days, it's weird when you see the Springboks play, and then, you know, a few months later, then they suddenly play against each other. It's hard to comprehend how, you know, to have that mindset, and especially nowadays you hear a lot about how the guys say how good friends they actually are off the field. So yeah, but I think any one of us who played rugby, even if it was at school, I think we all understand, you know, it's a game, and obviously you give your all. But I mean, and then once the game's over, that's a beauty of being a man, I think. Anyway,
These days the girls play rugby as well.
Sorry?
These days the girls play rugby as well. So.
Yes, and they're rough. Tell you what, I just wanted to ask you. I mean, you mentioned there that you farmed with, you know, your father-in-law, and obviously you lived in the same house. You mentioned, was there? I mean, is there one or two stories that you can share that he shared with you from, you know, from back in the day, you know, his Springbok playing days, or even just his normal, you know, everyday rugby days?
Yeah, I'm you know, today I make so many videos, and I basically film everybody talking, and I've got great content of guys like Thys Moss, Neely Smith, and I've got Jan Boland on video, but I never sat down and captured the stories. And today I regret it quite a lot. But maybe sometimes as a photographer, I say some sunsets you don't have to photograph. Just look at it. Just enjoy it. You don't have to. And maybe with my father-in-law, I've got a lot of video footage of him playing with the kids and talking and farming and everything. But I never sat him down and said, Dad, just share those stories. But he did share stories. But the best stories were actually shared by other people about him. And I mean, one, for instance, Duitse Bosman that started Varsity Rugby, Varsity Cup with Francois Pinaar. His dad and my father-in-law were great friends from Vereniging, and they played club rugby together. Okay. I mean, his dad shared incredible stories, and apparently one of them was that when they were playing against a very tough opposing scrum, they would set so low that it would make it very difficult for the hooker to hook the ball, because in those days you weren't allowed to throw the ball under the hooker's feet. Yeah. And my father-in-law adapted a way to hook the ball with his head, because his head was so close to the ground that he. And apparently they changed the international rugby laws because it was so dangerous. I mean, if the scrum collapsed, you would have. But I mean, that was typically who he was. He would, if he couldn't hook it with his feet, he'd hook it with his ears or with his nose. But he'll win the ball and he'll steal the ball. It was, and I mean, I learned so much from him as a farmer as well. That's exactly the way that he ran his business. I mean, when I joined him in 95, 98, somewhere around there, the interest rate was close to 25%. And I could see him being, you know, very disheartened during harvest time in the evenings. But the next morning, after a shower and a cup of coffee, he was the IB Malan that, you know, he looked like a 20-year-old when he started, and he had new plans. So I always knew if he was tired late in the afternoon, tomorrow morning, I'd better be sharp. We're going to farm today. And it, you know, looking back today, it was, I became a man in those 7 years because there was no turning back. I learned from him that there's no turning back, no retreating. It's make your plans, change your plans, but tomorrow we start afresh and we go for it. And I think that's why he became a leader and a Springbok captain, because I think that's the attitude. You know, if you're behind halftime, you can't say, no, we're not going back onto the field. You got to change your plan and come just harder.
Yeah.
And I guess in a sense with COVID and everything now, we need that type of attitude. We can't lie down and say, oh, geez, we're going to give up now. You only lose when the final whistle goes and you're behind. But before the final whistle goes, so we've still got a lot of fighting to do.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Tell me, I mean, the biggest part of your career, you've been a photographer, and I want to start off by saying, starting before we get into the actual, what you've done over your photography career. I mean, you're not just a photographer. You actually work on I don't know if the right term is a wine estate or if it's just a wine farm. I don't know what's the right term, but you are an export sales manager for one of quite a big brands in the world. That's what you do for a living. Like I would say, I mean, this is what I do for a living, and then I do other stuff on the side as well. So I think it's the same with you. I just don't know how you balance it. Sometimes I've in the last few weeks that we've spoken, I've been actually trying to kind of like, but what does Thys actually do? Is he a photographer? Or does he work on a wine farm? So when you actually phoned me on the weekend and said, listen, I'm starting to work on Monday again, then I'm like, okay, I suppose that is his first job, or his first priority is the wine farm. Just quickly, just mention, you're welcome to mention, obviously, who you work for and stuff. There's no secrets about that. So just tell us briefly, what do you do from the wine perspective?
Okay, I'm actually a qualified teacher, so I taught business economics, and accountancy for 4 or 5 years. I can't remember, but I did that at Outeniqua High because it's close to the best surf spot in South Africa, Vic Bay. So I actually, in all honesty, made my career choice on what school to go and teach based on the surf break. And I surfed my lungs out every morning before school. 10 to 5, I would paddle out. And I'd be ready for the teachers' meeting at 20 past 7 with the water still dripping out of my hair. And then after school, I'd say to the kids, don't get up now. And there are some of the kids who played good rugby. Rikus Libber was one of the kids I coached there that became a Stormer center. In fact, in my under 16 year, we moved him from playing flank forward to center to stop a guy from Oakdale on the wing. And his dad didn't like it at all, but he played. I didn't make the. Luckily, I wasn't the first choice coach. I was like an assistant coach, but together we moved him, and it was the right decision to do. But so I was a teacher for a few years, then backpacked overseas for a year with my wife, and when we came back, I went to Uppington to farm with my father-in-law. So I had no farming experience. I could only count. So I counted the ostriches and I counted the vineyard rows and I measured and I learned how to farm, and eventually I ended up at Lawrenceford Wine Estate for 7 years working for Christo Visa. And while I was there, I studied an MBA and I went into the marketing side. So yeah, that's my job, and obviously started doing a bit of photography on the side, and it's just a hobby. And I've got no qualification to be a photographer, but through a few lucky events, I managed to get accreditation, started taking pictures for the local newspaper, got to go to Newlands, and Kobus Vise helped a lot. When I got blocked by certain people, he'd always say, no, you're working for Supersport today, and he would help me with accreditation. And I'm very thankful for that. He's still the same guy who was at school with me. He would always, ask, how can he help? And so he's always the first guy. When I walk onto Newlands, I look up to the commentator's box and I see if Kobus is there. I walk up the stairs and I go and say hi to him. So, yeah, so photography, a serious passion. And it actually got distilled down to just working a lot of stuff I do on my iPhones these days. Yeah. And it helps a lot with the wine marketing, because marketing is telling stories. And if you can make a video and capture a story, and the shorter you can do it, the more to the point you can do it. The young generation, the attention span is not as what we think it is. So if you don't capture the guy within the first 10 or 15 seconds, they're not going to stick it out for 3 minutes. So for me, that is very important. So photography and wine marketing, and interesting enough, I sell into markets like Holland, the UK, Germany. They all love rugby. They all love the Springboks. So my
Oh, wow.
connection with Springbok rugby players has opened incredible doors for me as a wine marketer.
Yeah.
If you watch that in the video series, I actually touch on it, how I made took Springbok or rugby pictures and then made wine labels out of it. And through that, I connect with the people. So I honestly believe if you want to sell anything, you first got to be able to connect with whoever you're going to sell it to. And
Yeah.
for me, photography, everybody loves a good picture of themselves. And that's why I know everybody in the Springbok team, because if I take a good picture, I make sure they know that I've taken a good picture. Because there are 30 or 40 other photographers. And for me, it's not about anymore. It was in the beginning of getting the front page or the back page. I've moved on from that. I want to get to know the guy that I'm photographing. For me, that is, I mean, just through my videos, through my last video, I did videos, photos of primary school kids who became Springboks, like Andre. Through that, Andre's mother has connected with me on Facebook. Karen, I haven't spoken to her since he's probably 4 or 5 years ago. And today I connected with Jano Augustus. His mother has contacted me. And for me, that gives me a buzz. Not the photograph, not the front page or the back page. There were days when, I know that the balance was out when I was chasing the front or the back page. And it was important to go through that phase. Because now I don't even submit pictures to the newspapers. I don't even send it in. I send it to the players. I mean, just an interesting story on a picture. I took a picture of the junior box playing in the World Cup in 2012, I think.
Yes.
And they had to beat in the quarterfinal. Yeah, in the quarterfinal, they had to beat England by 4 tries to move to the semi-finals.
Yes.
And they played in Cape Town Stadium. And I think it was William Small-Smith who broke through and then scored the first try in the second half. So they had to score 4 tries in the second half because they scored none in the first half. And I think the second or the third try was scored by Peter Steff de Tooy, who I didn't know at that stage. And somehow I took an unbelievable picture of him diving in the middle of the post, through the post, scoring a try. And I still remember his arm. And somehow I posted it and he got a hold of the picture. And when I met him, probably 6 years later, and I showed him the picture and he said, "Did you take that picture?" It carried me through a very dark time in my life. I think it was through an injury. That picture, now for me, that is worth more than 20 front page.
I agree 100%.
You know, so if one of my pictures can carry the World Rugby Player of the Year through a dark, and it wasn't even posted in a newspaper, it was probably on Twitter or somewhere. Someone got hold of it and gave it to him. But when he said to me that picture meant a lot to him, that's just the motivation I need to get out the next day and do more.
That is awesome, man. You've touched on quite a few things, and I want to just go back a little bit. Like I remember watching when I was going through all your videos and stuff, just seeing what you've done and people that you've met. Sticking with your photography now, I wanted to ask you. I mean, there was a specific guy that came up quite a few times that became like a mentor to you, a photography mentor, Meton van Sail, and I think it's worth mentioning him because I mean, he didn't just play a role in your rugby photography. It later, as I went on watching, you did a lot of
rubber duck.
And I mean, and funny enough, when I was watching that, all your videos, that one specific picture which you go on about the guy that jumps out of the boat, I actually recalled seeing that picture whenever it was. I mean, I remember seeing that picture and I was like, oh wow, I actually now know the guy who took the picture, because that picture is very, very famous, as you actually allude to in that clip that you do. Just tell us about Meton. Is he still involved, or is he done? I mean, how did you guys actually become friends, or he become a mentor to you?
So when I started, I think I started in 2003, 2004 to take more sports pictures. I've always loved sport and I've participated. I actually did that very first Transagalas 32 years ago. I raced in the first one and the second one. And Maton actually photographed it, but I didn't know him at that stage. But when I started doing sports photography for District Mail, which is the local newspaper, I spoke to the sports editor, and I said to don't you, or to the guy there, don't you know Maton van Zyl? Because I see he's the top photographer in Die Burger. At that stage, he was the senior photographer at Die Burger. And she gave me, I think it was Marika Roberts, she gave me his number, and I phoned him and I said, Maton, I love photography and I love sports photography, and would love it if you'd share some tips with me. And at that stage, I was doing my MBA, and he said to me, well, if you as long as you buy beer, I'll talk. And I mean, Maton is just so down to earth. When they walk around with these massive cameras and they look quite like they don't want to engage, but these guys are just focused on what they're doing. But they, you need a certain mentality to sit next to the sports field in the sun and the wind and the rain, and to wait for that one moment that can make you, that can make the back page. But so I went through one day before class, and I took my little camera and my little photo album. I printed like 10 photos. And for me, why it's important is he could have said, I mean, I had a Fuji Fine Pix camera that didn't even have a proper clip-on zoom lens. It was really entry level, and in the beginning of digital photography. And he had a 200,000 Rand Canon Mark 1, 1D Mark 2, whatever, and a 90,000 Rand lens on front of it, 400 mil zoom lens. So, I mean, thinking back today, I was actually stupid to contact him, but he looked at me and he said to me, Thys, you can take the same picture as I can, but the only difference is and he said it in Afrikaans, he said, ek gaan op my gat sit en jy gaan op en af hardloop langs die veld, maar jy kan dieselfde foto neem as ek. And there are many moments in my life where that could have been the turning point. If he had said to me, sorry boy, with that equipment you're going to get nowhere, I probably would have backed off, and I probably would not have continued. And that's why whenever something good happens in my life, photography-wise, I pick up the phone, I phone Maton. Maton does a lot of motorbike adventures now. He left the newspapers. He still takes photographs. He's actually, he's commented on a lot of my videos, and just said that it inspired him. And actually, during the Cape Town Sevens this year, we were sitting with legendary photographers, Wessel Oosthuizen and S.I. Alexander, and somehow Maton's name came up, and I said, geez, yeah, we miss Maton. So I phoned him. So first of all, I made a video. I said to the guys, listen, I'm going to send this to me. So we sat there in the photographer's room and we sent a video to Maton, and he sent us a video back from behind his pub without even wearing a shirt. Someone filmed him and he sent us a message back. And for me, that is the value of staying connected. In the end, that guy, he was really a turning point in my photography career, and photography has given me incredible memories. And if it wasn't for Maton that day saying, Thys, you can do it, I probably would have missed out on many opportunities. And that's why when people come up to me today, I don't look at the equipment. I don't look at what they've done. I look at, do they have the passion? If you've got passion, and if you believe in what you're doing, I mean, you can do enough to get to where you want. I still don't have a very expensive camera. I've got a 60D. You can ask the photographers. I mean, it's a good camera, but it's not the best. I just work harder. I walk up and down. I've been chased off the sidelines at Newlands more often than I've been at Newlands, because the officials don't like me. I walk till I get chased off, and then I walk on the other side till I get chased off. But I've got to get the pictures because I don't have the long lenses. So
yes. I mean, that actually, I mean, it brings me to, I mean, you've got so many moments that you can share with us, and obviously we've only got so much time, but I want you to share like your top 5 moments from not people, but moments that you've photographed over your career so far, that stand out for you. If you can just share, like, off the top. I mean, I know it's probably going to be difficult. I should have before the time, then you could have thought about it proper. But I think off the spur of the moment, it's going to be probably more true than anything else. The first 5 that you can think of that really stands out for you, whether it's sport or anything, because I know, and we'll touch on it, you've covered more than just sport.
Yeah, no. I think if the greatest photography experience of my life was actually climbing Kilimanjaro with Francois Pienaar, Henny Leroux, Johan Steiger, Scotty Gibbs, and photographing. It was 2009, taking pictures of the Springbok flag and the Springbok jerseys, 3 Springbok jumpers. They were wearing Springbok jumpers. And Scotty Gibbs was wearing the Lions jumper that they were going to wear during that upcoming Lions tour. And looking back today, I didn't really comprehend how massive a Lions tour is. I mean, I am so excited about this upcoming Lions tour and holding times that'll happen. But, you know, I got asked 5 days before we flew, I got asked by Dominique Sylvester, who was co-owner of Saracens. I was taking pictures of his daughter and at Steenberg, and he said to me, how fit are you? And I said, oh, fit enough to take your picture. He said, well, on the top of Kilimanjaro. And I said, yes. When do you want to go? And he says, we're flying on Friday, and that was on the Sunday. And on the Monday, I got all the information, and I heard that it's going to cost 16,000 rand. So I went back to Dominique and I said, no, there's a bit of a misunderstanding. You know, if I have to pay 16,000 rand, I'd rather buy a camera. And he said, no, you're not paying. He says, you bring your sense of humor and you bring your camera, and I'll take care of the rest. And to stand on the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro with Francois Pienaar, I mean, I nearly didn't make it to the top. I was completely not prepared. It was difficult to take pictures. It was minus 25, but I managed to, and I mean, to see Francois leading us up the mountain, singing, writing our names in the snow. It has to be one of the greatest moments of my life. And, you know, to share, you know, just to climb Kilimanjaro is great, but to climb it with Scotty Gibbs, who I mean, not even Os de Rand could stop him in 97. He was the player of the series. And for me to spend time with these guys, see them suffer, see them close to tears, emotional, that's got to be one of the highlights. And I mean, this is no particular order. I think another highlight for me was 2 or 3 years ago, Chad Leclos. I photographed him every year when he came to swim in Stellenbosch. Now, I'm a swimmer myself, not even in the league of being able to train with guys like this. But to have an Olympic gold medalist just know my name was, or, you know, if he retweeted something that I tweeted, I felt really proud. I took incredible pictures of him, but obviously used the pictures to chat to him, and he was an incredible guy. He ended up staying over at my house that evening. So the next morning, I have Chad Leclos in my kitchen making oatmeal before a race, and I had to pinch myself. And again, it's photography that's given me that opportunity. And last year, I think it was about last year or maybe a year before, he contacted me and he said to me, you know, why don't you come and have a swim with me at the Stellenbosch swimming pool? And I took my GoPro and I spent an hour and a half in the water, in the lane, listening to his coach, talking to him, photographing in his face together. I mean, it's just, as a swimmer, that was incredible. Another moment is being a surfer. I followed probably the greatest sportsman of all times. I know people will take me on, but Kelly Slater is 49 and he's still in the world's top 6, not even top 10. And I heard him speak to Dan Nicol the other day. He didn't make the Olympic qualification. He missed it by 1 spot, and he says, well, now with COVID, we will have to requalify. So he's actually...
wow, that's awesome.
Look at his attitude. So when I turned 50, I did a road trip to Jeffreys Bay, and the sole purpose was to photograph Kelly Slater. And I spent 2 weeks standing on the rocks. I was a bit like a 16-year-old groupie at a rock festival. I felt a bit guilty afterwards that you can actually, you know, stalk a sportsman like that. But for me to take pictures of him, I took literally 3,000 or 4,000 pictures, and got a picture of him doing an aerial in Die Burger published, and I've got an autographed picture by him, and I met him, and I got my selfie. All my schoolmates, they joke about me taking selfies with everybody, but I think in the old age home, I'm going to go and sit and sift through all of them. And so that to me is definitely one of the highlights. Another highlight was actually working for Ernie Els on one of the SA Opens. So I did 2 days, a Saturday and a Sunday, and I got paid to walk 18 holes per day with Ernie Els and his caddy on the green, walking with him. So I could listen to, I mean, I had to photograph not every shot, but all the moments, and I could hear him plan the shot. Ricky Robertson would say to him when Ernie said, no, I've got to use a 3-iron. He says, no, I think you'd rather use a 4 because the adrenaline is pumping. You hit a good shot, you're going to overplay it if you know. I didn't know this type of stuff. So to, you know, just to speak to Ernie or to see Ernie, let alone, you know, be on the greens with him. And that year he came back from an injury, and Retief Goosen chipped in on the 17th and won by one shot. And I photographed the disappointment. I could see, I've got photos of Ernie, dropping his head, and that to me was, absolute highlight. And then maybe the other highlight was doing another golf series for some Saudi Arabians who came to play in South Africa. I photographed a lot of Filipino's golf days, and through that, I got the gig to do this. And on the second or third day, the one guy chipped the ball into the water at Fan Court, and I asked him to play the shot, and got a very nice picture of the water and the grass and everything flying. And the guy loved the shot so much, and he said, "I want to have a private word with you after the round." That evening, I thought he's gonna, he put his arm around my neck and said, "I want to have a private word with you." I thought, oh goodness, here it comes. He gave me his card, and his surname was Khashoggi. Now, his brother, I said to him, "I know this surname, sir." He says, "Yeah, Adnan's my brother." Now, Adnan Khashoggi was in the 80s. You can go and Google him. He was the Time magazine's personality of the year, but he was there for arms dealing and smuggling, and actually ended up in prison. And this guy's name is Amr Khashoggi, and he said to me, "I want you and your wife to come to my daughter's wedding in Barcelona. I'll take care of everything, and you take the private images." So we flew to Barcelona, and we were treated like kings. And I've got pictures of my wife sitting with Adnan Khashoggi, the arms dealer, chatting to him. And I had to pinch myself and say, Thys Lombard, who has no qualifications as a photographer, but through golf, I can't play golf, but through a golf shot, I'm sitting in Barcelona with my wife, chatting to one of the Times magazine's personalities. And that's what I say to kids who are into photography. I say that one picture that you take might just be your ticket to Barcelona, and then they don't understand it. But one golf shot taken at Fan Court, and so there are many more moments like that. My first test match in 2005, where Dan Carter, I love Dan Carter, and we won that test. John de Villiers played a great all test matches. I've done 5 or 6, so I'm not the type of photographer to fly to different test matches. But I managed to do a Lions test in 2009 in Durban, which was unbelievable. Flew up the Saturday morning and flew back the Saturday evening in a private jet. I didn't know that people actually watch rugby like that. So also through friends and connections. So photography has been just so kind to me. And today I've got thousands of friends in the rugby arena. Guys like Paul True, Brendan Fender is a good mate of mine. I actually met him through my son, and his son were at preschool together, but we're still good friends. I've taken pictures of Brendan celebrating after a win, Currie Cup win, when the Sharks beat the Stormers, and got some of those pictures published in books. And it's just a very powerful connecting tool. And I love it for that. Yeah.
You've had. You've just mentioned some of your top moments and stuff. Some of them were great opportunities that came through. Like you mentioned about the Saudi, wedding that you guys attended. That was an opportunity of a lifetime. You mentioned Kilimanjaro. You've had plenty of opportunities and stuff, and I'd really recommend anybody that's watching this to actually to go to your YouTube page, and just go watch through Thys's journey. It's really amazing. There was actually some moments that I had a good chuckle and stuff as well. Just the experiences that you've had. Like I've said, there's been so many things. You mentioned just now that you're not a professional photographer or a qualified photographer, and I know something that's very prolific. It's also the way that you kind of present yourself is, and I'm going to get this wrong now, is short media, or let me allow you to rather say it, but just explain to us what that actually means.
Okay, so another highlight of my life is when one day, it wasn't too long ago, 3 or 4 years ago, Bob Skinstad was commentating at Newlands, and he waved me when I saw me with a camera. He said, I want to have a chat with you. And he said to me, "I know who you are and I know what you're doing, and is it possible to set up a meeting with you?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, when?" He said, "Well, how about Monday morning?" And I went to him, and we started chatting about, and he said, "I see what you're doing with your mobile phone and on social media, and I think you're the best short format new media specialist in the country. And I thought, he actually tweeted it, and I screen saved that tweet because I had to go and think about it, and he nailed it on the head. I mean, not the fact that I'm the best, but short format new media. I mean, that was 3 or 4 years ago. I won't go into the background why I was actually forced to do all of this stuff, but I just realized that people in the wine industry connect with people and with the stories. And I was still doing stuff with my BlackBerry, and the quality wasn't as great. But when we moved over to the iPhones, I mean, the quality is so good and it's so instant that you can put logos on and you can edit right there on the phone, and you can have it uploaded on Twitter, and someone in America can read it 2 or 3 minutes after it was shot. So I would sit at a rugby match, and I started putting lenses on my phone to bring the action closer, because the zoom on the phone doesn't really work well. And at a stage in my life, that was all I had, so I had to get really good at it. And when I didn't have someone that can do an interview, I decided, well, I can speak, so I'll interview the guy. I'll film myself, and sometimes I'll just hold the phone in my hand and film myself interviewing the guy. And I thought that's good enough, because it's, as Bob said in a short little video clip, he says the content becomes the king. So, if you can forget about the quality is important, and the better you can do it, the better result you will have. But sometimes the quality is not the most important thing. Having the fact that you've captured the story is more important. And today you can watch the news. I mean, the guys capture a lot of the stuff on their iPhone. So I think short format, it means it's not a big camera and a rig, but my sound is good. I've got good lighting, I've got good focus, and I use a tripod whenever I can, because you need stability. You don't want to look like you're busy filming in the middle of an earthquake. And in the end, if the story is good, it'll travel. And short format and new media is the fact that it goes on to all the social media channels. I mean, what we're doing today is new media, and I think after COVID, this is going to be the norm. We're going to be doing all our wine tastings. I mean, I used to travel 4 or 5 times a year for the last 20 years overseas. I think those days are gone. I'm happy. I've had my 20 years of traveling. I don't mind if it's over. But why do you have to be in front of the guy if you can do a wine tasting and talk to the guys on big screens like this? You don't always have to. I think face-to-face is still first prize, but our carbon footprint doesn't have to be as big as it is. So I think a lot of good is going to come if we survive this COVID thing. A lot of good thing will come out, and new short format, new media is going to be the norm for sure. And hopefully I'll stay ahead of the chasing pack, because just guys who laughed at me at Newlands when I was taking out my iPhone and taking videos. The same guys are now photographers, and they've got equipment worth 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 rand. They now invite me for coffee and they ask me, how do I do it? And for me, that's a massive compliment. Guys who laughed at me, and so I think
that's really, I think you hit the nail on the head by saying, you got to try and stay ahead of the chasing pack, and it's tough. I mean, firstly to find something, but then if you find it, then like you say, to stay ahead of the chasing pack. And I mean, that's great. Just on that, what has been some of your most difficult photographic experiences? Because I mean, it can't be easy.
I think I read up quite a lot and look at and I've picked up that yesterday's news is old news. So for instance, I used to do a lot of golf days, and then you put the photographs on afterwards at 7 o'clock at the dinner. You have these rolling photographs, and sometimes you've edited some of it, and some of it you don't have time to edit it. But I thought, if I make a video and I edit it tomorrow or the day after, and I send it out on Monday, I get 2 or 3 views or likes. The guys have moved on; they're already planning their next golf day.
Yes.
But if I can edit the video in the golf cart while I'm taking the pictures and the videos, and when they walk in at 7 o'clock, then we play the video. So that's a bit of a challenge. So I got good at doing that because I forced myself. But I mean, it was really stressful, and once or twice the video wouldn't render and save, so I couldn't get it onto. I remember one golf day for I wanted to play the video at 7 o'clock, but we only played it at 8 o'clock. So I struggled for 1 hour. I struggled to save it. But so those things have been quite difficult. But it's so rewarding because people talk about it, and I've actually connected through one of my videos with someone who spoke about it, who I filmed probably 12 years ago at Arabella, and he said that bad shot that you had on the TV screen, it was actually me, and he's in the wine industry. And we spoke 2 days ago on WhatsApp, and he said it was me that you filmed, and I was absolutely petrified when I walked in there and I saw the cat wants to be part of it.
Let him join.
So was petrified when he walked in and he saw himself play the bad shot on live screen. Sorry, let me just get the cat here.
That's fine.
Sorry, that's the beauty of live TV.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Those are the moments that you know that makes it so much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get to some stories just now. I just want to get through you know, some of the meaty stuff, but I know because there's some stories that I really want you to tell us about, and there's some interesting questions coming through as well on the chat. I asked you about your top 5 you know, moments, you know, that's highlights that stood out for you. And I specifically said, you know, not people. And you mentioned earlier on, you mentioned like Chad Leclos, you've mentioned Andre and stuff. But what is the top 5, or who is the top 5 in your eyes most famous people that you've photographed so far?
Tiger Woods.
Oh, wow.
I photographed the practice rounds of the President's Cup and at Fancourt 2004 or 2005. I mean, I'm a massive Tiger Woods fan. I just think it's just incredible what he's achieved. So when I saw Tiger live, and he was there with Jack Nicklaus, with Phil Mickelson, with all the top guys. So definitely Kelly Slater. Definitely, I mean, Kelly is. As soon as people who don't play a sport also know your name, then you transcend the boundaries of your sport. And I mean, Kelly Slater, everybody in the world, might be because he went out with Pamela Anderson for a while, but everybody knows Kelly Slater. So obviously, you know, Dan Carter is a world superstar. People who don't even watch rugby know who Dan Carter is. So for me, he's a very famous superstar. Chad Leclos. I mean, if you beat Michael Phelps trying to win his 18th Olympic medal, and 21-year-old beat you, then people will talk about you. So Chad Leclos, Cameron van der Berg, I photographed 3 or 4 times in Stellenbosch. I think those are. But you know, don't discount guys like Damian Willemse, Peter Steph du Toit. I mean, Peter Steph being the World Rugby Player of the Year. I work with a lot of Dutch and Belgium importers. They don't watch a lot of rugby, but they watch the World Cup. They knew the names, and so these guys are now they're on the world stage thanks to, you know, direct broadcasting and the World Cup being, you know, broadcast to a lot of countries. So yeah, a lot of the top rugby players. But for me, yeah, any sportsman that's good at his sport. But as I get older now, and maybe just to touch on the older generation, you know, we so easily forget the old guys. When I went to that reunion with my father-in-law of the '63 Springbok reunion with the Aussies, I mean, I met all those guys, and you know, the Mannetjies Roux and Dave Stewart, John Gainsford, Tommy Bedford, Hannes Maree, they were all there. David de Villiers was there on the Saturday as well. I mean, these guys they were known all over the world because of their sporting performances. So for me, those guys are. I also met Gareth Edwards last year when the Lions guys were here for the '68 Lions reunion. Those are world stars. So to have photographed them for me is pretty special.
Yes. Yeah. Tell me, I mean, there's some stories that I know of that I've picked up through your journeys that you shared. I'm gonna get to one of them later on, but I mean, let's start at the top. I mean, one of your first, whether it's awkward or whatever experiences was with Trevor Immelman. I mean, tell us about that. That's a great story. I actually enjoy that story quite a lot.
It's again a turning point, I think, and I think, you know, one of the friends who've tuned in, a guy called Neil Steinman, he talks about coaching and mentorship. He's a top coaching mentorship guy, but he also talks about meaningful conversations, and sometimes you have those single moments in your life that become turning points. You either go this way or that way, and that was definitely one of my photography turning points and key moments. Was I was taking pictures with that little Mick and Drick camera of mine, and the caddy said to me, "Please put away your camera." I didn't have accreditation. I was just living next door to the golf course, so I sort of snuck through the gate and went to take some pictures. And as I walked off, Thys Lombard came past me and he said, "Where are you going?" And luckily I knew him. And he said to me, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Well, the security guys are busy throwing me out." And he said, "No, rubbish. It's my tournament. I'm the organizer." "Why are they throwing you out?" I said, "Well, I wanted to take pictures, but I don't have accreditation." I didn't even know about accreditation. And he said, "Come with me." And he gave me a media armband. And my wife then said to me, "You got to go back to that hole." I said, "No, man, the caddy's going to hit me." She said, "Well, you can't. You've got accreditation now." So I caught up with the players and I stood there and I took up my camera. And again, he saw me and he says, "Put away your camera." And I said, "Well," I showed him my armband. I said, "Media." And he looked at me like that and he said, "With that camera?" And I said, "You guys play, I'll take the pictures." And everybody laughed, and it wasn't funny to me. I was quite embarrassed. But I took some nice pictures of Trevor, and then it was 2 or 3 days later he won the tournament. And I took obviously I had accreditation for every day, and Trevor won the tournament. And I got a picture where he actually was kissing, the cup like they normally do. And I met his dad, Johan Immelman, who became a real mentor to me. Is an awesome guy. Was also in the wine industry and then went into golf. And I met Johan and gave him the picture. And Trevor wrote on the picture, "Thys, live your dreams. Regards, Trevor." And to me, whenever I did presentations to MBA students and I spoke about it, that would always come up and say, you can either accept the fact that you shouldn't be there and turn around and walk away, or you can go back and you can sort of correct your mistakes and just come back stronger. And for me, that's a key moment in my life, and that's why I wanted to share it on that video as well.
Yeah. You've mentioned Francois Pienaar quite a lot. I know I know you've done a lot of work with him, and you guys are basically friends in so many words.
We were not teammates, unfortunately. We're just friends.
I think being a friend of Francois Pienaar, I must actually off air tell you a story about me and Francois Pienaar. But I mean, you've shared a lot of moments with him. You've mentioned Kilimanjaro. In your journey that you do on YouTube, on your own channel, you've mentioned varsity sports, Kilimanjaro, the Cape Town Marathon. The list goes on. You've done so much work with him, and I mean, Cape Town Tens, all those things just come to mind just thinking off the cuff. You've obviously done a lot with him. Chad, you've mentioned, there's a very interesting story that I really had a big, laugh. It's about, I mean, you've done some music photography as well, some Arnie Carstens concerts and stuff that you've done. Watershed. I mean, there's an interesting story when you actually photographed Watershed. I mean, it's actually not your story; it's more your son's story. It would be interesting to hear his version of the story. But I mean, just tell us about that. I was in stitches when I heard that story.
It was actually a friend of mine who owns Buitenverwacht in Laasmark, a wine farm, invited us to this live event where Watershed, and I love Watershed's music. I didn't know it, but the lead singer, Craig Hines, was this SA water polo player, Springbok water polo player.
Yes, you're right.
Top sportsman. But I didn't know it at that stage, and I was actually sitting with my daughter taking pictures. She had a camera and I had a camera, and we were taking pictures, and all of a sudden my son was playing with a little friend of his, Fikile. They were running around, kicking over picnic baskets and causing havoc. But I thought, that's what kids do. But eventually the power went off halfway through the show, and Craig was very calm. He just stood there and I actually took some nice pictures because the light's important. So when the lights go off, you get a different sort of ambiance and different pictures. So I took some nice pictures of that, and his smile and everything. But in the end, the power came on. They started playing, and the power went off again and stopped playing, and then it came on again. And I think it happened about 3 times. And that evening, my son was sitting in the bath because he was covered in mud and dust. And my wife said to him, "So what did you guys do?" And he's, you guys really enjoyed it. And he said, yeah, it was a good time. He says, we found this tap that we opened and closed and opened and closed. And then the security guys came and they took us away. So it wasn't a tap, it was an electricity switch.
Sure.
So they were the guys switching on the lights on and off and actually stopping the band playing. So I met Craig Hines a year later in Joburg at a wine show and came for a glass of wine. And I said, Craig, I've just got to share something with you. And he said, what's that? I said, remember the show where the lights went on or off at Buitenverwag? He said, yes. I said, well, I'm sorry to say it was my son who switched off the electricity. And he handled it so well. He just said to me, you know what? Not everybody loves my music. Can I buy you a beer? And he bought me a beer. It was awesome, yeah.
Yeah,
When
he's
you
a
have
great
kids,
guy.
you have to think on your feet always.
Yeah, that's very true. We've got some questions here let's start off with, I mean, a lot of us know who Paul True is, and I mean,
Hey.
you've mentioned him this evening as well, and he's got a question. Yeah, I hope this is something you can share. Thys,
Yes.
tell us about Jam Jar. Is this something that you can share with us?
Yeah. So interesting. Paul went through a patch where the Springbok Sevens did really well. I mean, Paul's a super coach. He's a super human being, a very close friend of mine. So earlier today, we actually spoke off air. We said we've climbed mountains together, not literally climbed mountains, but speaking about what stuff we went through in life. But at one stage, I got quite involved by photoshopping photos for Paul. He would sort of contact me out of Australia or out of Singapore and say, I've got this concept, but I want to pitch it to the players, but I don't know how to pitch it. Can you put this in? I remember the first one I did was actually said, they defend a try line. Well, you know, you can play from your own try line. You can run for 90 meters and they can't stop you. But as soon as you get to someone else's try line, all of a sudden you can't get through. That last 3 meters is impossible. So I want my players to defend every line on the field like a try line. So I just photoshopped rugby posts on the 25 yards, on the halfway line, on the other. And he would then show that to the players. And I did a long jump where he said you need to do a second jump in the air. So I had this long jumper with second steps, and I photoshopped a lot of different stuff. And then at one stage, we were really tough. And we had coffee. We often went to a McDonald's and had coffee together. We spent some precious moments. And I think for guys like Paul, it's nice to have someone who loves rugby and knows a bit about rugby. But when he shares a problem with me, I'm not going to try and solve it. I'm just going to listen to it.
Yeah.
He will find the answer. He just needs to speak to someone. And I mean, I don't know anything about rugby strategy or playing or anything. So at that stage, he was going through a tough patch. And I spoke to my wife about it. And she said to Paul, tell Paul to jam jar. And I said, what does that mean? She says, you know, when you've got the jam jar and everybody around the table tries to open it and they can't, and they give it to you, and then you just click and it's open because they stopped a split second before it opened. Paul, his team was jam jar. If they just push through another step, they're going to get through. So it's something that he adapted, and he said, you know, there's moments in life where you have to jam jar. You've got to just give it that extra little twist and it will open.
Yeah.
And I think in life, we often have to jam jar. I think we're busy jam jarring against the COVID virus at the moment, but we'll get through it.
I think you're spot on there. Yeah, that's very true. There's something I want to ask you. Going through your Twitter timeline, trying to find a photograph to make a flyer, you know, for you coming on the show, was quite a challenge. But then suddenly I stumbled upon you and a bunch of Marmite jars or whatever you call it. Half of them had your name on, and all kinds of things. And as I went on scrolling, I found Marius Skuman and you in the picture. And again, there's Marmite in the picture, and I'm like, what's going on here? And I haven't asked you this at all, so I honestly don't know what is this Marmite thing about. Clearly, you are a lover of Marmite. That's the only part I can think of. But I mean, what is the deal with Marmite?
So I can't cook. If my wife goes away for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, I eat Marmite and cheese sandwiches in the morning, lunchtime, and in the evening.
Oh,
and
wow.
the good thing is, by the second or the third week, as soon as I start spreading, my mouth starts watering. I love it. So I can eat actually for 2 weeks in a row. When I go to London for wine business, the first thing I do is I buy a jar of Marmite because you can buy it in the UK. So I just love the salty. And then one day I was standing around and my son said to me, Dad, you love Marmite so much. Why don't you make it your logo? So that's a good idea. So I went and played around in Photoshop and I transformed the Marmite logo. I actually have a jar here at the back. I can put it on.
Yeah, show us. Why not?
Yeah. So I just changed the Marmite logo to make it how do I there Thys Lombard photography.
Oh wow, yes, I see the camera actually.
Yeah, and about a year or two ago for my birthday, my daughter studies art, so she did this for me for my birthday. So it's like a arty way of. So they all know I love Marmite, and I'm a bit of a bad chef. So, and now when so I had a couple of stickers made. They're exactly the same size as a Marmite jar, and when I work with people, I give them a jar of Marmite because that's what I love. And on the bottom it says it's got my mobile number and it's got my email address. And I know not in my house, but in most houses, a jar of Marmite will last for 3 months. So you give someone a business card that doesn't cost much, but it stands on their breakfast table for the next 2 or 3 months, and it's just for me, it's just fun. I love Marmite, so
it's brilliant. It's such a cool concept. I mean, you should push that a little bit. Maybe Marmite can get hold of you and give you a box of Marmite for like a year or whatever. That is brilliant.
For a year, it would have to be 2 or 3 boxes. A box won't last for a year.
Oh wow, yeah, obviously because you eat it morning, afternoon, and evening. Yeah, that's actually quite true. I don't know if you know Charles Mangold, but he also sent a message. Just any memories from your days at your alma mater.
Charlie and I think we dated this at the same res at Stellenbosch. We dated our wives were in the same res at Stellenbosch. I met Charlie. He was a very good, also a hooker. I've got a soft spot for rugby hookers. Let's just get that right. I've got a soft spot for rugby hookers, and I didn't see Charles for many years. And since I started taking a lot of pictures at my old alma mater, Paul Gym again, my son went to Paul Ruus. It was just closer to home, and so I did a lot of photography with Paul Ruus as well. I just love schoolboy rugby. I was thinking about it again today. If I have to choose between a super rugby match and a good schoolboy rugby match, it's a no-brainer. I'll go to the schoolboy rugby match. I just love the innocence, the talent and everything. So obviously I went to Paul Gym for 4 years, was in boarding school, was a really bad rugby player, but loved rugby. If you don't play rugby, you stay in boarding school the whole Saturday morning. So it's quite lonely. So you play rugby. And so about a year ago, when my son left Paul Ruus, I thought, okay, it's time to now put some more energy into Paul Gym. And the day I walked onto the pitch with my camera, the guys greeted me. They gave me a jacket, cap, accreditation, parking tickets. They say, come afterwards. We know what you've meant. Because I've done all the inter-schools. I try not to miss an inter-school. And then I give them some of the photographs. And I love the school, not because I think it's better or it's just my memories. I mean, I get goosebumps when I see the Paul Gym rugby jerseys every Saturday. It's still like when I was in Standard 7 and I saw it for the first time. And when I was in Standard 7, Kobus Burger and Skalk Burger were the guys in our first team. You know, Klein Skalk and Kobus Burger played enough. I mean, they were legends. They went on to play many rugby matches for Western Province. And so I've got an incredible fond memories of my days in Paul Gym. And but I've made great memories at Somerset Primary School when I photographed a guy like Andre Pollard in grade 6 playing barefoot rugby, a guy like Brayton Poole who was in grade 1 with my son and who became a junior world champion high jumper. I mean, I've got those photographs. I've shared some of the Damien Willems I photographed in Standard 6 in Paul Ruus, a Miller du Plessis in Standard 8 in Paul Gym. For me, it means actually more than going to a rugby test match. Obviously, they're different, But I mean, last year I'm a Paul Gym old boy, but I was invited by Reno, the boys I coach, into the boys I change room before the first team went onto the field. And for me to stand there, we never played that level of rugby. It's incredible to see these guys, and I'm friends with these guys till today. You know, we on Twitter and Instagram, the guys connect with me. They say thank you for the memories. And maybe that's not why I started doing it in the beginning. In the beginning, my motives were probably to try and get a front page and a back page picture. But these days, it's absolutely to connect with the players and build up a relationship with these guys. You know, a guy like Damian Willems. I just spoke to Peter Steph de Toey before I came on air on WhatsApp again, because I sent him pictures and asked him how he's doing. And, you know, for me, it's incredible that you can speak to these guys during the World Cup. Damien answered my WhatsApps during the World Cup. I was overseas and he was obviously went to the World Cup halfway through the World Cup. And for him, just to acknowledge Thys and Miller yesterday said, thanks for all the memories and the good advice. Now, I don't think I've ever given him good rugby advice. I can't imagine that. Maybe I've given him advice on coming back from an injury and hanging in, you know, jam jar, fuzzbait. But to see these guys on television and they play and they've come through the schoolboy ranks where they were just these, innocent young boys who wanted to play rugby. For me, it's absolutely pure and beautiful, and I can't get enough of it. And that's what I miss now most. I miss schoolboy rugby. I don't miss Springbok rugby. I don't miss Newlands. I miss schoolboy rugby. If you have to ask me one wish, what can I do? Is I want to be next to the rugby field at Paul Gymnasium, and they can play anybody as long as they win. I'm happy.
No, that's actually my last question was if you had one wish, and I mean you summed it up very nicely. And I think we all, in this time that we're in now, we're all just wishing for, I think, one thing, you know, whatever it may be, how big or small it may be, you know, for each person there's something that I think we're missing in some way or form. But at the end of the day, I think as long as we're safe and, you know, looking after ourselves and we're with our families, which I know you are, you know, then the world is okay, you know.
We'll get through the rest. Certain things you can't. You don't have your family and your loved ones, you're in trouble. But if you've got your and if you're all pulling in the same direction, which I think is a bit of a problem in South Africa, but I think the virus has killed a lot of the bad stuff anyway around. I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about the motive. Because thankfully South Africa, we've been spared the brunt of deaths. But you know, when you go through a challenge like this, you sort of forget about the niggles. You start focusing on the real things. And for me, first of all, is focusing on my Savior, on Jesus. Because if you don't have hope, I mean, I don't know how anybody survives without Jesus in these times, because it's actually the only thing that's true. The rest is all fake news, and for me, that's what this whole virus has brought. I mean, back to the basics. Why are we on? Where are we going if you get the virus and your lungs don't function and you don't get through it? What's going to happen to you? And luckily, I know that with Jesus Christ, I know where I'm going. I'm not ready to go. I think I've still got pictures to take, but
no, I'm sure. Quite a few more photos to take, and I mean, a few more interesting people to meet in your life. It's been an honor for me to, you know, to sit down and chat with you, even though it's like this. But like you mentioned, it's, you know, it's probably the way of the world or the future, you know, that we need to start get used to and stuff like that. And it's been quite fun getting to know you over the last few, you know, weeks and stuff since we've finally got in touch properly. And I mean, thanks for the opportunity, you know, that and for everything that you've shared with me. It's really, really cool. And I want to mention it again. I mean, anybody that's watching, please go find Thys's YouTube channel. I think Thys Lombard is all you need to search on YouTube, and you'll find it. And I think you've got about 21 inserts already. That, I mean, every week you've got every week. I don't know how many you do it per week, but they're not long. It's like 3-4 minutes. The last one you did is I know because I watched all of them, but the last one you did was like 7 minutes. It's your longest one so far, but it's actually a very, very good one. It's the one about Andre Pollard, Brighton Pool. There was quite a Damian Willems was in there. And it's just, do yourself a favor, go watch that insert specifically, because it's actually quite nice to see a guy like Andre Pollard, who at the moment is the most highly paid player in the world, and he's a Springbok, and he's a former Bull, which I'm proud of. You actually didn't tell us something. There's something you didn't tell us, which you revealed to me this morning, and we can just touch on that quickly before we say bye. Your dad was a staunch Bull supporter, as far as I know.
Yeah, my own father grew up in the Free State and went to Tux, worked in Pretoria. He studied part-time, and that was when I really threw my weight in behind the Western Province guys. We were living in Strand, so he was a Blue Bull supporter living in Strand. And I know Quintus van Rooyen, they actually called him Quintus van Rooyen, wrote for Die Burger. He was very pro Northern Transvaal in those days. And obviously my dad's friend, Frick de Peer, played for the Bulls, Northern Transvaal. So he was a massive Northerns fan. And in those days, there were not a lot of live sport on TV. It was the Comrades, it was Wimbledon. The whole South Africa came to a standstill at 3 p.m. in June, because everybody watched Wimbledon. And then it's the Comrades, Wimbledon, and then obviously Currie Cup rugby. And I mean, my whole life I've supported Western Province, and my dad Northern Transvaal. And when the two teams played against each other, someone's weekend was messed up. And I was for the Northern Transvaal team. It was mostly my weekends that were messed up. So after 4 o'clock, it was, I mean, I've had some of the biggest disagreements with my dad because it was so emotional, you know. And I miss that, you know, and I think that's what sport brings, you know. If sport doesn't stir up emotion and discussion, and why do you watch it? If you don't get emotion, I mean, I watch Tom Brady, American football. I've watched the one documentary about 10 times, and I get emotional when I look at this guy who was a 6th draft pick and he became the best NFL player of all times. And I just think to myself, there's hope for everybody if you look at the story. And that's what gives us hope, you know. It's because once I've learned from Brendan Fenter that sports is not life and death. He's a medical doctor. So I said to him, how do you handle it when your team loses? He says, it's just a game. It's just a very important game. And for 80 minutes, it's the most important thing. But the final blows, and you've given your 100%, the score is irrelevant. It's just a game. On Monday, I'm a doctor. I have people with cancer or with whatever sitting in front of me, they're dying. He says that's life and death. So it's perspective. And that's what I like about sport. It's just out of the room for a moment or two. And then.
No, thanks, Thys. I really, really appreciate your time and everything that you've shared with me. It's been, and I mean, hopefully one day we can meet, like properly meet face to face or something, and have a Marmite sandwich or something together. But that's really cool. I've enjoyed everything that you've shared with me, and tonight especially. And I mean, I'm sure everybody that's tuned in as well. I think the numbers have been quite up the whole time, which is really nice to see. And it's nice. And I hope a lot of people get to watch this, and you're welcome to share it with anybody. But mainly, at the end of the day, it's nice to get to know people like you that you only see on social media, and you actually don't know who these people are. You converse with them sometimes. You might disagree with them sometimes. But at the end of the day, we somehow form part of the bigger picture of what's called social media and all that nonsense. And but moving in the circles of sport, we all play a tiny little role that nobody maybe cares about. But this is why I do this thing is to get to know guys like you and show people. But we all have a role to play in the world, and the world of sport in this case. And I mean, thank you very much for your time. I really, really appreciated it.
And thanks for giving people like us an opportunity to also share our message. I want to wish you well with what you've started. It's early days for you, and jam jar. When things get tough, there will probably be moments where through my 21 videos, often I thought, why am I actually recording this stuff? Who's going to look at it? I did it for my own journey, and I think you give people like us an opportunity to share, and if it impacts one person positively, it was worth it.
I agree 100%.
So all the best to you as well, and thanks for the opportunity. It was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thanks so much, and stay safe. and hopefully we see each other sooner than later. Thanks so much, Thys.
Thanks, Jock. Cheers.